Hey, what's up guys? This is Mast. Hopefully you guys are looking forward to me doing some patch notes videos because we're starting to do some patch notes videos. I'm doing them right now. So basically 4.22 patch coming out pretty soon here. So we're gonna go ahead and scroll through it a little bit. Pretty short patch, but there's some really big changes I want to talk about. Skins, blah, 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 you know, emotes, who cares? This is not the stuff I do. I don't even play with skins at the time. So if you guys are looking for the skins and stuff, go check them out on your own. I'll put a link in the description. Otherwise, go watch somebody else's patch note video. Titan's Bane is getting a nerf, and this is something that we definitely need to talk about because I think it's a ridiculous nerf. But let's go ahead and go into it. So as we approach our Smite World Championship in January, we're focused on making targeted adjustments that ensure multiple strategies are viable at the competitive level. Yes, that's what we should be doing. We should have multiple strategies, and that is what this nerf does not do anyways. In recent tournaments, we've seen a shift away from mages as sources of late game power, being replaced by hunters. Yes, we have. Assassins have similarly been pushed out as their ability to deal damage while players are heavily itemized against physical damage, with warriors and guardians replacing them to act as front lines. There's a lot in play that contributes to this strategy, and each change is targeted at addressing a specific concern without pushing out the strategy entirely. Okay, so we can read the bottom part too, but it's not that important. Let's sum this up real quick. Titan's Bane is a late game penetration item. It's meant to be late game. It's also kind of mid game penetration item that does percentage penetration. And percentage penetration naturally is the best late game penetration because everybody has their base protections built up and a lot of people have defensive items, especially in the tank meta we are in. Now, currently what we're looking at is that there is not enough penetration for anybody that is not an ADC. And so they don't do enough damage to the tanks and people build tanky because of that, which means Titan's Bane, if anything, needs a buff or we need another percentage pen item for physicals. Mages definitely need more percentage pen outside of Obsidian Shard. They need more than that, which is why mages are being pushed out. Meanwhile, hunters get Kin Size, Executioner, and Titan's Bane, which means they get like crazy amounts of pen. They can get about 70% pen plus Kin Size, which is absurd. But no, assassins and warriors get stuck with Titan's Bane, which is a good item, but it's the only option they have for late game pen. And then mages get Obsidian Shard and some other flat pen items. So that's a huge problem that we're running into right now. And instead of increasing that, they have nerfed the one universal item in an attempt to nerf hunters, which makes actually no sense because if anything, they should be nerfing Kin Size and Executioner because those are the actual hunter specific items. But no, we're not seeing that, which is why we are not in a crit meta. We are in a pen meta because hunters have those options. So I don't get this change at all. They literally spelled it out and then did the opposite and actually hurt the meta even more and made it even worse. So that's a thing. Spellbound Kasari is getting nerfed from 50 protections to 40. Okay, not a big deal. Basically an attempt to nerf Shoguns as well as the mid game you get from Shoguns or Spellbound Kasari. That's fine. I don't really care about that change much. It's a little bit of a nerf. That's probably fine. Voidstone is getting a nerf as well from 70 protections to 60. This is a good nerf. Voidstone's ridiculous. You can look at a regular magical defense item and you look at Voidstone and you basically get defense item, 70 protections, Voidstone, 70 protections, cooldown, 20 pen for your entire team. Voidstone's pretty good and it's very cheap. And so basically, yeah, having the exact same protections as an actual tank item while being a hybrid item that helps your team with a pen aura is very good. So this is a good change for it, making it not quite as tanky. Tiny Trinket getting a buff in magical power, so that's a little bit more early game for mages. That's a solid change, I guess. Lost Artifact getting a change from 15 to 20 power, decreased cost in 600 to 550. I don't care much about this. It's going to be a very small change overall. Really, the big thing actually being the 550 instead of 600, so you get an extra potion. If you want to start with that, I don't really care. I don't play mages. I'm not going to talk about this. It's not a big change to begin with. Decreased cost on Soul Trap, 1400 to 1350. Exact same thing. You're getting 3 potions instead of 2 potions when you start. Doom Orb. This one is a little bit interesting. This is definitely one we can talk about a little bit. But compared to the 100 magical power Book of Thoth starts with, the 40 magical power Doom Orb begins with combined. The 40 magical power Doom Orb begins with, God, I just read that terribly, but combined with the risk made this item unattractive. Basically, 40 magical power doesn't look good. It's not cheap enough to really make that feel worth it. By increasing its magical power while keeping the top end the same, it is both stronger when initially picked up and slightly less risky. Players who want to rush magical power will now have a more attractive option open to them. So basically what they're doing here is they're increasing the power on Doom Orb and then they're decreasing the max stacks so that you don't have to stack it as long and you get more power to begin with. And so basically Doom Orb is getting a pretty solid buff, and it is no longer a risk reward item, at least nearly to as much of a degree. And I really dislike that because I think changes like that make no sense. It makes the game less interesting, at least personally. And I think a lot of people agree with me on that. There's no point in dumbing down the game for items like this. You just need to make the items valuable enough if you want to keep them in the game. And I just feel like what you're doing with Doom Orb here is just unnecessary, because at this point, if you want to have an item like Doom Orb, you're not making it very risky, you're just making it cost effective. So you really should just leave Book of Thoth as the option and Warlock Sash as the option. Maybe you should make Book of Thoth cheaper if you want something like that, and then have Warlock Sash as really the better late game option, because it is a lot of health. But when you have this kind of risk reward item that's not really risk reward, it's just cheaper and not quite as much power and easier to stack, it's like it's just not worth it. So they need to make it just one, like either make it risky and potentially very good if you can not lose your stacks and stack effectively, or get rid of it. We don't need this in between. Soul Eater. Soul Eater provides a unique effect, but it's simply too expensive and comes online too slowly for most gods. We are reducing the cost and increasing the unevolved item's power to give it a quicker punch before it fully evolves. Soul Eater is maybe an interesting concept for an item, but I don't know why we think we need it in the game. Why do we need gods that can self-heal themselves just because they bought items? Gladiator's Shield is already ridiculous. Lifesteal already feels like a problem on 80 carries. Why do we need to keep adding these healing items? Like, why can't healers be unique and lifesteal on 80 carries be unique? Why do we need to add in an item for warriors that people will pick up, and now an item for assassins that people will pick up, which is Soul Eater? Soul Eater sucks. Soul Eater is not good, and the reason it's not good is because you don't actually heal much off of it. You get 10% of the damage you deal to minions, and that's not actually going over the minion's health. That's actually what I thought it would be originally, is no matter how much damage you do, you're getting 10% of that back. Basically, like, let's say you do 600 damage with one ability to a minion, you get 60 health back. But no, it's how much you do up until the minion dies, which means that you're very limited in how much you can actually heal with abilities, especially if you're doing 2 abilities on a wave. Like if I'm playing Wukong and I won the wave and it doesn't quite die and then I use it with my 2, I barely get anything out of that 2 because they're almost dead, if that makes any sense. So the problem is this thing does not heal that much. I don't think it needs to heal that much. I think it probably shouldn't be in the game, but if they're gonna make it a good item, it's because it doesn't heal that much. So what they're doing is reducing the cost by 100, increasing the power, and then reducing the evolved power. So all they do yet again is just kind of dumb the item down. And when you get items like this, it should be a risky early game because you're not as strong. You need to build up this item. That's why you don't see people pick up stacking items often in the jungle. You see very early game focused items. And so when you get something like this that's meant to be a little bit risky in the early game, which Soul Eater absolutely is because you have to stack it, then it needs to be weak in the early game and then stronger in the mid and late game. And they're just taking that away. Now it's just a stronger early game, but it doesn't matter anymore once you get into the late. It's like it's a slight buff, but it's taking away a lot of the interest in the item. Anyways, moving on from that one, Fenrir. I am a Diamond Fenrir. Fenrir is the god that I mained in Season 1. I was nuts on Fenrir. The biggest thing that makes Fenrir interesting, and a lot of people don't see this because Fenrir, you basically have to play Fenrir at a competitive level to see this. Diamond plus ranked is when you actually see this come online. Fenrir is actually one of the most thoughtful and skillful gods in Smite because he is countered out very easily. He is very risky because he sticks to people at melee range with a channeled 3 with his jump going in with his ultimate. He's a very risky character. He's heavily countered by cripples and silences and stuns, and you're using your mobility to engage very often. And while you might save a little bit of that, you have to be very smart with how you do it. That said, he does have 2 abilities for mobility, not including his ultimate. So he does have some safety net there where you can engage with one and disengage with the other. You use your runes so that you can stun with your jump, or you could get AoE damage with your 3 on your jump, or you could get AoE, or not AoE damage, but extra damage on your 2, and then use that to box somebody with extra lifesteal and power. And with this change, what they are doing is they are making it so his 2, which is his big steroid, you get a ton of power and a ton of lifesteal, no longer uses up any runes. And what that does for Fenrir is basically makes it so, for one thing, a lot of people will now press 2 and then jump, and then they're going to get triggered because people who are actually decent at the game are going to jump away before they jump, which is just obvious. It's like, hey, you press your 2, you're probably going to jump on me. I'm going to jump away, and I'm not going to get hit by your jump. So if you're an actual Fenrir main, you should learn pretty quickly you're going to jump and then pop your 2 and auto attack, because that's just Like, even if I didn't have runes for stun in the past, even if I just could get some free damage out of my 2, I would never pop my 2 before I jumped, at least unless I knew it was going to hit because they didn't have a jump or anything, because you're just giving away that you're going to jump. You just popped your steroid. Of course you want to engage soon. So that's a change that I really dislike because it takes away some of the intelligence from Fenrir for no good reason. We'll get into more of that in a second. They're also adding bonus protections to his 3, which is 5+1 per level while channeling the ability. This is really unnecessary because more than anything, this is going to stand out in the early game and the mid game before people have penetrations, or at least good penetrations. And the thing about Fenrir is he is already disgusting in the early and mid game. That's where he's good. He's already really good there. The troubles he has in the early and mid game are purely because of people escaping his 3 or canceling his 3. Do you know what happens with Brutalize here when you're adding these protections and they do that? You don't get the protections. You still break the channel either way. So it doesn't make sense as a change. It just makes his 3 even more broken when you actually can't get out of it. So I don't get that at all. It's already an incredible ability if you can't escape it, but now they're just making you tankier. So that's a weird change. Seething Howl, like I said, it no longer consumes runes. They're also buffing it. And for any of you guys, the reason they're buffing it is because it's no longer getting a scaling increase whenever you actually use all 5 runes to make it stronger. But the thing is, Seething Howl is insane. So this buff just makes it even more absurd in my opinion. When you actually get late game and you get this ability online, you get 5 points in this ability, you're getting 80 power and 35% lifesteal, and now it's just easier to use because you don't have to worry about using your runes whenever you're fighting. So it's just a simpler ability, and the last thing Fenrir needs is to seem simpler at a low level especially. So it's very interesting that so many of these changes in Smite right now are focused on making the Smite better for newer players. And now they're buffing Fenrir, who's one of the easiest gods to play at a low level, which is just bizarre to me. Which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Fenrir. I want him to be better at a competitive level, but this is absolutely not how you do it, because now he's just OP and he's easier to play at a low level. And I think they need to be making sure that he's even more skillful, or at least focused on the skillful parts of his kit instead of just making him less skillful in general. As well, his ultimate change, I'm not super opinionated about this, but one of the things with this change is that it's going to be, I'm sure, very easy to hit Fenrir roll. That's one of the things that made him at least a little bit more challenging, is making sure you hit the ultimate. So I'm not sure about this change. We'll see how it plays out, but I think a lot of people are going to have no trouble hitting the ultimate, and that's going to make it just a little bit stronger, and we don't need that with all these other changes. He's going to be ridiculous. But yeah, anyways. RDO has some changes to her. These changes are pretty solid. Basically, they're just nerfing her healing, especially at an early level. So her energy surge going down by basically 20 per level, and also taking away 5% scaling. Scaling doesn't matter much for this ability, but the 20 per level is actually a pretty decent impact. So I think that's a good change. And then the decrease in magical power scaling on the life tap heal, which is her 3, from 10% to 5% per tick. This is actually a pretty decent nerf because that's basically going to half scaling compared to what it was before. So that's actually pretty decent. We'll see how that plays out. I think that'll actually be a decent way to kind of line her up a little bit more with other gods. Cuchulainn is getting a nerf this patch. This is obviously a pretty decent nerf to him. They're nerfing his early game, which I think is totally fine. But one of my personal problem with Cuchulainn, and this is just me personally, is his ability to do crazy AoE damage with 2 ultimates. That he ults, knocks you up, switches stances very quickly after, because normally you basically ult before you switch stance, or to get your switch stance with Rage, because you build up Rage crazy fast with that ability. And then you can ult again, at least very quickly, if not immediately. And both of these abilities are very high base damage. So one of the big reasons that Cuchulainn is so good is not only can he focus you out with basically 7 abilities with his switch stance, but he has 2 massive AoE ultimates that he can use on a bunch of different people, potentially, and are very easy to hit, very reliable, and they CC. So the nerf to his bonus shield, which is a good nerf, 20 plus 24 to 10 plus 20, especially at level 1, level 1 to level 3, that's going to be a pretty big difference, seeing that difference in health. And as he gets into late game, of course, as well. But I don't think that's really his major problem. Yes, his shield feels strong, but I still feel like that Cuchullainn's basically broken in terms of just how much AoE damage he's capable of doing. Is single target damage, I think, is one thing, but when you're adding all of he can 1-3 ult you, at least make it so that he can't do 2 ults, you know? Like, if he can focus out one person, great. Or if he wants to do a bunch of AoE teamfight damage, great. But don't let him do both. So I think that's the major problem. I don't think it's the shield. Yes, the shield's been good. Yes, they've kept nerfing it. But, like, even if they nerf it, I think he still has that core problem. At least personally, as someone that's played him and just feels like he's ridiculous enough that I don't want to play him that often because I actually feel mean. And also decrease the self movement speed buff on the 2 from 10% to 5%. This is a good change. And then Ymir is here, and he's getting a buff to his ultimate. Frostbite passive is now immediately applied to enemies in the area. That means as soon as he pops his ult, they get hit by Frostbound, or by Frostbite, not when he actually activates it and does damage, but just as soon as he activates the ultimate in general and starts to charge it up, they get hit by it. And then it also refreshes when he detonates. So basically, because of the 10% damage reduction he gets through Frostbite, Ymir is going to be a little bit tankier when he's ulting, which I think is a good change. And then also, if he actually, well, really, it's not going to apply very often, but he can potentially get Frostbite a little bit more easily now if anybody's juking his ultimate. Like if Anhur jumps up in the air or something like that and he wants to fight the Anhur. So it's going to help Mage Ymir a little bit as well. A lot of the time, you're not going to run into that because normally if you're building Mage Ymir, you want to make sure they're not getting out of your ultimate. But just in case, that'll actually help as well. Mostly, it's a tanky thing. But that does it for the patch notes, guys. Hopefully, you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you guys got a decent idea of what I was talking about here. I feel like we went through everything pretty decently, and hopefully it did not take too long. Hopefully we don't have any dabs in these emotes anyways. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If there's anything you want me to change a little bit, let me know, because obviously haven't really been doing this. So of course, I'm sure I can get better. Lighting's a little bit weird. It's really late here and my light is literally burned out. I have to go fix it as soon as I can. But it's really late, so I can't. But thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I will see you all in the next one.